John. I mean, we did some of the things that we've been doing earlier to lose ball games. We didn't protect the ball. We weren't able to stay consistent on offense, and we gave up some big plays on defense that we hadn't been giving up. And those things have been Achilles' heel all year long.
And welcome to another episode of the Turn Up For What podcast, talking your Houston Texans straight from Massachusetts actually this week. And on a vacation edition, I've got a couple of people here to try and help me out. Probably not seen as much and not as in-depth as normally do, but they were described as their own worst enemy by Coach Cully this week as the Texans went down 23-7 in the Bay against the 49ers, and probably a less than convincing Trey Lance, but we'll come on to that. But two returning guests to try and help me out this week from 713 Houston Sports. Ruben, how you doing?
What's going on, guys? Thank you for having me.
And from Texans Unfiltered, Jair, how you doing?
Good, man. Happy to be here and ready to talk football.
So appreciate you guys coming in joining us this week. Ruben, it's been a long old season, mate. How you coping?
I think this is probably one of the hardest seasons to watch, as a Houston Texans fan, because we all know this team was going to be bad. But from going to someone who, being Deshaun Watson, who you drop your jaw when you look at him play, to him not going to be on this team anymore, you're losing, nothing's going right for you. This season has just been, it's been horrible to watch, but it just is what it is. And, we are in the situation that we're in because of ownership and Bill O'Brien, and we're just living with the aftermath.
Yeah, and Jair, you got any coping mechanisms, mate? How you dealt with this season?
For the most part, I kind of wrapped my mind around the fact that we weren't going to be good this season, especially with a rookie head coach, who's had a lot of red flags coming in. For me, I mean, it was tough overall. Even these past couple games, you watch these games and you're obviously optimistic for the most part, or you wish for the best. You're looking mostly forward to like the rookies, but besides that, it's been pretty much what I expected. And the optimistic part, I guess, from the difference from this year to last year is that at least we're going to be able to keep our top 3 pick, or top 4, top 5, depending if we win out.
Yeah, no, I suppose that's in the age of parity. Well, it's the real reason it's cost control, right? But in the age of parity in the league, I suppose, yeah, you do have that silver lining of a high draft pick. That's not something we've had for a long time. We just talked about this a minute ago, Jair. I've just had the overriding emotion that this season has felt pointless so many Sundays. And when you think about the 49ers game on Sunday, did you learn anything new about this team?
It wasn't. People will say it was an ugly game, and I will agree. Only putting up 7 points, I mean, at least from a box score perspective, you would think it's an ugly game. But I think we saw a few developments, at least from the quarterback, from Davis Mills, which is pretty much the best you can ask for. Obviously, we have two sides of Texans fandom: people that are kind of pro Mill, people that are anti Mills. I'm mostly more in the middle, where I feel he took a few strides against the 49ers defense, which is pretty much considered, which is a top 5 defense heading into week 16, 17. So I think I tweeted this earlier, but I would take this version of Mills that we saw on Sunday versus the one that we saw against the Rams, where he put up better stats, better numbers against the Rams, but at least, yeah, in garbage time, exactly. But at least in this game, he was making throws that he could have made a few months ago. And for at least for the first half, you could see that the O-line and like the protection for the most part, it did a decent job. It wasn't amazing, it wasn't perfect, and it was going to be really hard against a really good 49ers front 7. But at least he didn't look like a fish out of water for the most part. He made that tough drive, which ended up in a touchdown. So there are certain throws that he made that kind of when I'm going back to repeating myself, but he made a few throws that I'm pretty sure he couldn't have made earlier on in the season.
Yeah, no, I think so. And you're seeing a development. And it's funny you reference that because I think people have, because there's been so few storylines this year, Ruben, I think people have kind of got caught up in, are you pro Mills, are you for Mills? And look, you can't really be for or against a young guy who's never played. And you can only judge what you see. There's been a lot of terrible fucking tape this season, the first couple of games. But that was not his fault because he should never have been in a position, he should have been the third string at best this year. And not Jeff Driscoll as your backup option, who finally got found out and tight end and all this kind of shit they've tried, which is kind of strange, really. But when you see Mills, there's obvious development there. He's got better as the season's gone on. Nobody doubts that. But I think what people maybe doubt is, will the development get him to a point at some point next season that will be good enough? And I think for me, I keep going back to the fact, if you bring in a veteran who's a capable starter, better version of Tyrod Taylor, they're probably going to beat him out and he doesn't necessarily play. But I think you persevere with him. But my question, Ruben, is probably, do you think his ceiling is high enough to the point where he reaches where he's even serviceable game manager?
I think so. So I am one of the, Davis Mills, pro guys, right? I look at his whole story as a whole. To him, only playing his 14 games in college, didn't really play good in college, if we're being honest with ourselves. Going to him coming to a team that wasn't even supposed to be, he's not even supposed to be on his roster, if we're being honest. Supposed to be number 4, his team. Adding all that stuff going in, his horrible first stint, and then getting better after they benched Tyrod Taylor. I think he's done enough to warrant, starting for next season for when, as far as him into being a game manager type quarterback, it just depends on the coaching. Because time and time again, we've seen this coaching staff failed him. The game against the Panthers, they said that they didn't want to, give him the playbook, that they wanted to, keep it low. And then games like against the 49ers, no second half adjustments, right? It was the same thing against the Seahawks. We've seen Davis Mills play good in the first half and then fall off in the second. I do think that is probably due to coaching. And once we get, coaches who could help him develop, then we could see the ceiling and the potentialness of Davis Mills.
Mm. Yeah, and I mean, I noticed that a couple of times on Sunday, and they're running, second and medium, second and long, and with this running game, and I think some of, obviously a young quarterback's friend is going to be the run game, right? And you're going to have times where it's going to put him in situations where he's less comfortable. When you've got Eric Armstead, when you've got Bosa, rushing on third down, an obvious passing situation, it's going to be tough for most quarterbacks because they're elite players, they're difference makers at this level. And I suppose that the sort of kind of comparisons against other rookies and all this kind of stuff, it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters really is that how good is he in the National Football League against the best. And I think the coaching staff hasn't given him a good opportunity, a lot of the time to be able to be put in situations to be successful. And I think the biggest thing is throws down the seam. That was abundantly clear from his tape at Stanford that was one of his most efficient routes that he threw. He could read linebackers, and you could see that. And I think you've seen what we've seen. I think really from Mills, Jair, is a guy who's improved in a bad situation, and a guy who is good against zone coverage. So last week against the Chargers, you had a team that played a lot of zone coverage, and he can pick that apart. He's shown that. They couldn't really rush. They've got a linebacker playing defensive end because of COVID omissions from their game day roster. And then this week you saw better defense. You saw a bit of regression to the mean. So where do you think in a new scheme, Jair, Mills could be? Because I think a West Coast system might fit him better. I think with a better running game with interior guys who can block a little, and with running backs with juice. Imagine that, right? A running back with juice. We've not seen that for a long time. But what do you think the Texans need to do, Jair, next season to make Mills successful? Because right now he's not in a situation to be successful.
The most easiest one, putting in perspective that David Culley's probably back next year, would probably be to probably promote Pep Hamilton to offensive coordinator. Simply because in Stanford, they ran a West Coast offense. That was something that Justin Reed was pointing out earlier last week when he was talking about. So that would be a pretty familiar and seamless transition, moving Pep to offensive coordinator. I think a big reason why Davis Mills hasn't looked like a fish out of water is because he's had Pep as a quarterback coach. And it would probably be best to already have a coach that's already worked with Davis Mills that kind of knows him. They already saw what he did in his rookie season. And kind of adding back to your last point, obviously, improving the run game is going to be imperative for the offense to take a next step in their development. And also, something I've liked or I've been encouraged about Davis Mills has been the deep ball passing the last couple games, because it's been the first time we've actually seen him actually air out the football. Against the Chargers, he had a few good passes to Philip Dorsett. And then this past game, he kind of had that going with Brandon Cooks. So if you can somehow build on that and obviously add more talent to the receiver position, because I don't see Chris Conley coming back. They were hyping him up as a deep threat, and he had a few plays. He had that touchdown against the Patriots in that gimmick play, and with Mills, and he also had that touchdown against the Chargers. But he doesn't seem like the option moving forward.
Yeah, I think not only do you need multiple pass catchers that are going to be, because I think that you talked Ruben touched on there, right, the second half adjustments that teams are making, but the biggest adjustment that every team makes is they go man coverage, because I think Brevin Jordan can do it a little, but he didn't see much of him on Sunday. I think Nico Collins, and I think I've seen a couple of people touch on this, and it's been a concern of mine. He doesn't play like the size he is, and you saw that on the. So he needs, and I think they're asking him to do things again that aren't necessarily his skill set. He's a guy that he runs a 4.5 or 4.3 or 4.4 or whatever it might be, but it's obvious on the tape it takes him a while to get up to that speed. So like short, sharp quickness stuff that Philip Dorsett actually showed, and I think he was a big loss, and actually an underrated loss. Week on week, not having somebody from the slot in terms of this offense. So I think there's a lot there that needs to improve. But in terms of what you think that this team needs to put around Mills, Ruben, what would you say is your top couple of things that needs to change? Because it feels like that there could be some easy fixes, and for me, I am looking forward to the day where we get to watch a new scheme, because it's been the same shit for 7, 8 years now. So.
Yeah, so one thing, I do like what Jair said about bringing in Pep Hamilton as the OC. They talked about potentially keeping David Culley for longer next season. I'm okay with that if Pep Hamilton is the OC. Like Jair said, someone who knows Davis Mills, who ran that system in Stanford. I'm all on board for that. As far as what we need to build around him, it needs to start in the trenches. We need some O-line help. There's one guy, his name is James Daniels, the guard from Chicago, only 24 years old, someone who was drafted, in the 3rd round. He's going to be a free agent, and this offensive line needs work, right? We continue to move Titus Howard. We don't have a certain spot for him. We don't know what's going to happen with Lermy Tunzel. So, if you want to see if there's anything with Davis Mills, you need to keep him upright first, and it starts with the offensive line for me.
And Jair, everybody's kind of talked about what the Texans need to do. In your view, what does Mills need to do to get better? What's his next couple of things that he needs to take a step forward in?
That's a tough question, because I still feel personally he's a developmental quarterback. I don't see him as a starting quarterback yet. I feel he's going to be given the opportunity to start simply because he's going to be like the only quarterback on the roster. But moving forward, I would like to see, like you said earlier, I would like to see another quarterback be brought in either via free agency or the draft or trade to help him compete. I feel for the most part, he's already an accurate passer. He's already a plus 65% passer. And obviously that kind of comes with, he's been given a very friendly, for the most part, offense in terms of screens, short passes, stuff like that. But I would like to see him take the next step in terms of the deep ball. And obviously that's not all on him. You need to add more weapons around him. And that goes for any young quarterback who wants to succeed. It's hard for a young quarterback to, for the most part, carry a franchise and take it to the next level. Most of the young quarterbacks coming in, they're going to have certain areas they're going to struggle. You can even look at it from the other. I mean, I'm not comparing Mills to Zach Wilson or any of the other draft picks, but it's going to be hard to just come in from day one and just put the whole team on your back and keep moving forward. Even with Deshaun, he was 3-3 as a starter. So I was adding to that. It's really hard to win as an NFL rookie or as a young quarterback. But I don't even see him. To be honest, I don't even see Davis Mills winning a lot of games in 2022. If we're being honest, it's mostly going to be of him taking personal growth in certain areas, which is, and a lot of it is it's kind of hard it's kind of hard to ask him to grow without a run game. So I think for the most part, I still see him as a game manager, as a quarterback. But so I think as long as he keeps on making all the right throws, not turning the ball over, I'll be happy with it, because he has 10 interceptions and 12 starts. In 12 games, 13 games. So if he's able to just, for the most part, not shoot himself in the foot, I'll be proud. I'll be happy with whatever we get from him next year.
Yeah, one thing I was thinking about the other day, right, is that a lot of people, and I remember having this conversation in the offseason, that you kind of knew that they were always going to go into next season, kind of whatever happened with Mills, and that was before you'd even seen him take a pro snap. There's been some good tape, and there's been some, I guess, bad defenses predominantly, bar the Patriots, but then the second half kind of evened itself out. Same with the Seahawks game. One good half, one bad half. And I kind of struggle with that, really. And I think, he needs to have somebody to compete and teach and show him, the finer points of what it is to be a pro quarterback. Jimmy G seems one. Again, he's got complimentary comments about Jack Easterby. He's got a real closeness with Caserio. He's going to be out. We've just obviously played the 49ers. Ruben, is that one just too obvious?
It kind of is, but if it's going to put you in a position where you could win games and also help the development of Davis Mills, because like Jair said, he's a developmental QB, totally 100% agree, then I'm all here for it. Jimmy G, he's been playing a lot better, before going out, he was playing good, and a veteran here, on the Texans, someone who could also, mentor Davis Mills. He's not going to come in. Everyone's not going to be expecting Jimmy G to save the franchise. He's just going to be the veteran quarterback on this team and just see what the Houston Texans could do. I wouldn't mind it at all.
Jair, regardless of who you bring in, is there any point bringing in a guy who's going to beat out Mills if the whole point of next season to see what he's got?
I would say so, simply because I don't want to give Davis Mills anything that he doesn't deserve. So if he for whatever reason beats out whoever comes in, I'm all for it. But kind of going back to mantra Caserio, it was really about what he says. It's all about, people might cringe, but it's all about competition. It's not about handing anything out. Yes, you want to see Davis Mills on the field because he was a third round pick, and he had certain upside, certain tools that made him a day 2 pick by many people when he was entering the draft. But for me, it's all about whoever plays out the best, let them start. And in this case, I was just looking at the quarterback list. It pretty much, the 2 quarterbacks that mostly catch my attention are 2, which is Marcus Mariota and Jimmy Garoppolo. And obviously, one's going to be a free agent and one's going to be available via trade. But I think the 49ers, they're going to be ready to move on sooner than later, because they already traded up most of their first round picks for Trey Lance. So they're pretty much going to want to see him start next year. And if that's the case, putting Patriot ties aside and just looking at the body of work and what they bring to the table, the 2 better quarterbacks are going to be Mariota and Garoppolo if we choose to go that route and not draft the quarterback. So if that's the case, I think we kind of need to start wrapping our heads around the fact that Garoppolo could be here next year if Caserio chooses to go that route. And I think he would be a decent option in terms of, somewhat helping this team be competitive and also being a good mentor for Mills.
Yeah, and I think Mariota's a great option as well potentially. I mean, I know Bill. I know if he'd come out the year that Clowney was taken in 2014, if he hadn't gone back to Oregon for another year, I think it's well documented that O'Brien would have taken him. And Luke O'Brien might be in the division according to CBS Sports. Report that came out on Sunday. He's been pushed by Trent Baalke as the head coach. That'd be an interesting headline if that does come to fruition. But yeah, no, I think there's more change to come, and I think some of the moves that could have been made this offseason will be made next season. We've got a shit ton of dead cap money that's been inherited and taken on, so we're going to be limited, and it's going to push our free agent spending probably back into 2023. So that's the position we're in. That's the moves Casario's made, and he's criticised himself in terms of the team building job that's been done. I think that's been obvious at points. We've seen a couple of fledgling sort of backup type talents that we've picked up this year, and that's great. There's a lot to be added there. But yeah, this off-season is going to be a bit of turnover. We'll come on to some of the needs and stuff later on. Trying to wrap up the game on Sunday. Couple of calls in the third quarter. It was a tight game. What did you think, Ruben, of the forward progress call first and foremost about the thing? Because that seemed a tough call, and I think when the broadcasters call it out, who are do their damnedest to be impartial, when they call it out, it feels like that was probably the first time this season we'd maybe been fucked over by the refs a little.
Yeah, so I actually used to be a ref here in Houston. Shout out to the Tassel organization. So we got a group message, from our guy, and he's like, exactly what happened in the 49ers game is what you shouldn't do. That was, he was still going, ball popped out. It should have been for the Houston Texans. That was where we were really like, man, the refs are really hoeing us and, and trying to give it, to the 49ers. It was all downhill, from pretty much that play. And then David Culley happened, but for sure, that should have been Texas ball right there.
Yeah, and Jair, there was that. Well, what was your thoughts on that one? And then secondly, what was your thoughts on the Mr. Penalties? I think he's up to 10 now this season. Pharaoh Brown, I don't expect him to be back apart from week 1 where he looked like Gronk, and then the rest of the time he's not. He's just been nobody. Negates a 50-yard bomb. And apart from that, and a couple of big PI calls that we got, that I thought the second one on Brandon Cooks was weak. I thought there was a couple of spots that the ref did. There was a fourth down spot that they put on it, and it was at least a yard further forward than Trey Lance had actually managed to progress the ball. So what did you think of those couple of calls that really swung the game in the third quarter?
Yeah, the officiating overall was mainly questionable. We're trying to be nice, but it was awful for the most part. It was bad. It was really, really bad. The fumble, I was mainly frustrated because the Texans were already in territory of the 49ers, so they could have came away with points in that drive. And then with the Pharaoh Brown penalty, it was somewhat frustrating because it was a beautiful pass by Mills. I was mainly surprised because, like I said, I haven't seen I haven't seen the Texans really been that aggressive this year and trying to air it out. So it was frustrating. I was mainly encouraged in that drive, if I'm not mistaken. They still went down the field and they were in position to score, but Kaimi missed that field goal. But so I like the fact that despite the fact that they were already there's a flag that pulled them back for the most part in that aspect of the offense. We had seen that whenever a penalty happens, the whole drive mostly just goes to shit. But with the fact that they were able to like build on it and get downfield at least for to attempt the field goal was somewhat commendable. And going back to Pharaoh Brown, I don't see him coming back next year, especially the way he's been playing, all the flags. He's been mainly inconsistent, and whenever he's on the field, he's always instead of creating positive plays, he's always drawing flags and putting the offense backwards, which is pretty much what you don't want.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think you'll have Brevin Jordan in there and probably a whole new room at that position. In terms of getting down to that field goal that Kaimi missed, Culley doesn't go for it. 4th and short again, working on the assumption he's going to get 2 possessions back before the end of the ball game, which, considering how much the 49ers were running it was always going to be a case that they would grind their way into the game, continue to run it, and control the clock as the game went on, because that's just what that offense does, and it's proven time on time that they're creative in the run game and can get yards. Ruben, what did you think of Cully's call? And you add that to a bucket list of calls that this season he's just not been aggressive, not wanted to go for it, gun shy, made some bad in-game management. I think that went back to the kind of thought that, what does he do for this team? Because he doesn't, schematics, no, okay, you're just here to be a cheerleader, and, we've got 50 of them or whatever, haven't you, on the sidelines? And
yeah, I think David Culley, just continues to show why he was never anything higher than the offensive coordinator. Multiple bad, clock management. I blame the Patriots loss on him. If we go back to then, when you don't go for it on fourth down and you're down, the Houston Texans were in the game until the end of the third quarter. You could have went for it, try. I mean, even if you failed, the fact that you go for it shows that you're trying to win. But then you don't go for it, and then you try to go for it later, and you just make yourself look bad. It just shows that you don't know what you're doing, and it's just been, time and time after again, where we see why David Culley, why no one wanted to offer him a head coaching job. That's the only reason why I say I don't want the guy here next year, is because, we have a lot of things to grow in this franchise, in this organization, that need to develop in head coach, and we don't have time for that. We need the head coach to come in and solve this issue.
And Jair, there were multiple reports out there. There was Ian Rappaport put it out on game day morning, and then secondly, it was in the Athletic as well, that they expect him to be back. I kind of toy between the idea of, well, next season's kind of going to be similar to this, so is there any point? Are you in a position to get the best head coach? Is your job attractive in the pool of jobs? Now, you just never know what's going to happen and what jobs will be available next year, so you run that risk. Caserio kind of very much seems like a risk management type of guy in terms of how he's managed the Deshaun stuff and all that to this point. But where do you sit on him? Because it feels like he doesn't do a lot for this team, and when he is called into action, he doesn't necessarily help us. So, is there any point in being here, regardless of what it's going to be like on the field?
I would say for the most part that I'm pretty indifferent when it comes to Culley. I mean, obviously he has a few moments where they're kind of laughable for the most part, like some of his game time decisions and some of his press conferences. Like, he doesn't help himself out sometimes. But at the same time, if we're just being completely impartial, I've been somewhat encouraged by this rookie class. And that's and sometimes you have to give credit where it's due. Maybe he lets his coaches work. So it's mostly about if we're already wrapping our heads around the idea that he's going to stay here. It's all about bringing in the right coaches underneath him, the right offensive coordinator, the right offensive coach to somewhat complement what Culley does. And if that's the case, there's no point, at least for me, of being upset that he's going to stay here, because there's nothing I can do about it. But it's all about hoping that Caserio and Culley can pick the right coach and put the right person in place.
And I think a great example of that, I mean, Culley is what he is. He kind of sits on top of that pyramid, doesn't do it. But Jair, how do you balance the difference between on the defense, for example, which has been a plus largely when you think about the level of talent that's there? How do you balance the future and what type of players you want to draft, the type of players you want to sign, when you've got a really specific scheme need for corners and safeties and linebackers to a degree as well? The front four guys, it's much of a much. You can kind of shoehorn them in a 3-4 or 4-3 most of the time, unless they're definitive outside linebackers in a 3-4. But how do you balance the fact between, if you keep Lovey next season, which he's probably done the best job at the coordinators, I don't think that's much of a debate. How do you balance between what type of players you pick and how you develop it? Do you get players for his scheme, knowing that he might not be here in 2 years' time? Or how does Caserio balance that in your view? Because I think that's probably one of the biggest balances he needs to get right.
Yeah. I know people cringe when they say this word a lot, but there's a lot of players that they're like, versatile, versatility. And there's mostly players who can make the seamless transition from 3-4 to 4-3. Like, they play different schemes throughout the game. And Caserio, like, I know it's kind of cringy, but he says he wants to bring in football players. So if you're technically a football player, it doesn't matter what scheme you play. It's, at the end of the day, it's football. It might just change what type of stance you're in, what type of technique. You might be standing up, or like putting your hand on the dirt to rush the passer. But if you're just drafting one type of player to play one type of scheme, it's kind of like a one-trick pony. At the end of the day, you want to pick players that are able to do multiple things. And if you're technically, if you're smart, you shouldn't just be a 4-3 defensive end. You should also be able to be a 3-4 outside linebacker. So as long as you pick the good players, and in this case, we have high draft picks, I wouldn't be worried about where we draft. We're going to be in a spot where we can draft really good players.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, looking ahead to this season, we'll do a couple of quick fire ones. Ruben, I'll start for you, mate. Looks like he's injured, as he has been a lot of his career. Looks like he's on the COVID list, so he might play on Sunday. Whether he does or not, has Justin Reed played his last game for Houston Texans?
I think so. I think, he probably wants to win himself. He's still a very smart, safety. He definitely had, some plays this season. I don't think the suspension went well with him. Probably still going to be a back of his mind. I think he leaves in free agency.
And Jair, where do you stand on Reed and Brandon Cooks gets his 1,000-yard season again? Obviously, they restructured that contract. He's got a couple of voidable years. What do you do with him also?
I think, in terms of Reed, just to answer that first part, I'm 50-50. He's a decent starter on this defense. I've kind of I've seen why. I can see why he struggled. The amount of safeties he's had to play through since he entered the league. It was Tyrann Mathieu, Tayshaun Gibson, Eric Murray, then it was Lonnie, and then it's been a lot of safeties. Kind of hard to be consistent when your running mate is always different. Plus the injuries, which are a part of the game. He kind of reminds me of Will Fuller in a sense in the defense. Like when he's on the field, he's very talented. But to his credit, this year he's been pretty healthy. He's had very good moments for the most part. But at the same time, I don't think any NFL GM is gonna be looking at him and like make him the highest paid safety in the league. That's not who he is at this point of his career. So if they're able to put all their egos aside and and work out a team friendly deal that works for both sides, I would be open to that. But at the same time, if he's ready to move on, go to bigger, different things, to a team that might be contending, I could see him leaving. But he's been okay. He hasn't been a liability for this defense. And in terms of Brandon Cooks, after he restructured his contract, I think he still has 1 year left in his deal. So if you would kind of have to decide, or at least I think Casero would have to decide, do I re-sign him to a bigger deal? Because he seems, or at least from the outside looking in, that he's happy to be there. He's willing to put in the dirty work to try to help this franchise come back to relevancy in a few years. So if he's all bought in with the process, he's a very talented player. The biggest concern with him was the concussions, but I had kind of made the point that wasn't a big deal at the time because every concussion is different. His were very mild to very small. So, and for the most part, he's been balling out. You can kind of argue that he's been more. Well, you can say for a fact that he's been healthier than DeAndre Hopkins, which isn't throwing any strays at him or trying to throw any shade, but he's been everything you want on the field and off the field.
And he's 28.
Exactly.
Yeah, he's a lot younger, do you think? I think, that's the issue with Cooks. I think you've got 1 year left. He's going to have a big salary cap hit next year when you've got a ton of dead money that you've taken on with the Merciless stuff, with Brandon, with Randall Cobb, with Bradley Roby, all these guys that we've taken, dead cap hits with, that we're going to, Zach Cunningham, like, it's just like the dead cap money next year. I think it's an underrated storyline. Caserio's not done a great job in that. Some might say it's a necessity, might not. But you're going to have to make some moves. Another guy you might have some dead cap with, Ruben, is Laramie Tunsil. Where do you stand on his future? I think the fact that he's not come back since week 4 either shows he doesn't, give a shit, which you can kind of see that from the limited knowledge you have. I'm not to kind of say he doesn't care about football, but he might not just care about the situation. Or they've said, look, we're going to move on from you, so take it easy. Which one of those do you think it is, and what would you do if you were Caserio in terms of Tunsil? Because it kind of feels like a luxury that you don't really need at this stage in terms of where the arc of this team development is.
Yes, I totally agree. If Deshaun's still here, then Lermy Tunsil definitely needs to be here. Since he hasn't come back and he should have, I think there's a good chance he gets traded in the offseason. A team that I've been saying for a while, Cincy, I think if they add someone like Lermy Tunsil, if they could give us a first round pick and maybe like one or two more, then I'm all for it, for the Lermy Tunsil trade.
And Jair, where do you sit on Tunsil, and who are the top three guys you want to bring back that are out of contract this year?
All right, so to answer the first part, I already wrapped my head around the fact that I don't see Larry Tunsil coming back this next year, and I've seen a lot of people also point that out. Texans cap Troy, he brought up the fact that there's been multiple things going on. Aaron Wilson also, they've kind of said they kind of agreed that he's no longer coming back, or or at least not to play. And for me, his injury wasn't that. I mean, I'm not a doctor, obviously, but the timetable for his recovery was like a month, maybe two. He should have been
4 weeks.
He should have been medically cleared to play already. So the fact that if you really love football, which or you love to play, you'd have been like, I want to get back on the field. Because even David Coley was saying it was mostly a personal reason. So it seems like it all points to the fact that he doesn't want to play, which I don't fault him, but at the same time, you're getting paid to do your job. So you kind of like leaving out a few teammates out to dry, but it is what it is. I wouldn't mind trading him. I think a big part, I think he's going to have a say where he goes to. Obviously, there's no trade clause, but kind of how Texans Cap pointed out in a while back, he's also very he likes to play football, but he's also very involved in his brand and stuff like that. So I think he's going to want to go to a big market, So I haven't really looked at certain destinations, but maybe New York. I know the Giants or the Jets, they could always use O-line help, and that's a big market for him. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you'd like to go to California. I think that's where, if you can get him to one of the LA teams.
Yeah, so
obviously the Rams are spent, but if you can get them to the Chargers, they're not necessarily set up front. I think it's maybe an option, but yeah, New York probably not. But yeah, I think that's a huge part with Tunsil, right? But what do you think the value is? What's the trade value back?
He also, I'm quoting Texas Cap a lot, but he kind of said a late first or a really good early second, and I kind of see that too, realistically, from the aspect that he has a big contract, and whoever acquires him is going to have to deal with the fact that he only has 2 years left on his deal. So you're not going to throw a first round pick for a player and then they just walk him because Tunsil doesn't like the market he's in or the team he's in. So whoever trades for him has to know that they're going to have to work out a new deal. So,
yeah, no, definitely. Yeah. And have you got a couple of names you want to bring back?
Oh yeah,
on this.
I would say the first one, if the money makes sense, is Kamu Grugier-Hill. He's been one of the few bright spots on his defense. And I would say I would have said Tabir Thomas, but he's on the contract for next year. Maybe Desmond King. I've liked the fact that he besides the interceptions, I like the fact that he's mostly a sure tackler for the cornerback position, and he's also a special teamer. So he kind of offers that dynamic that you want from your cornerbacks, that if you're not on the field, you're at least contributing as a returner or as a tackler, as a gunner on special teams. And then probably if we're having to bring up a few names on offense, if it makes sense for whatever reason, he's an old running back, but Rex Burkhead as a depth option, or as a mentor to that position, or maybe Chris Moore or Chris Moore.
Yeah, I keep Chris Moore around. I think. I just want to. If you have to draft 4 running backs this year, do it. Could just get some fucking youth at that position. because it's been tough watching. I think Malik Collins is a name for me, Ruben. I think he's probably played his way out of town because interior rushers are come at a premium, and he'd probably have a chance to go somewhere else. But there might be flags about his previous contracts. Any other names you'd want to bring back?
Justin Britt, is I think he's done a serviceable job, coming off the injury and then playing off COVID. That's unless we decide to take Tyler Lindenbaum in the draft. But wouldn't mind if the Houston Texans brought back Justin Britt, Camus for sure. I wouldn't mind Rex Burkhead at all. So yeah, just adding on Justin Britt, someone I think we should bring back.
Yeah, I think he talks a good game. I don't know if I've ever really seen him piece it all together, and I don't think when you've had Jimmy Morrissey in there, I knew he was missed out this week, not available. But yeah, you think is there? But yeah, I suppose I think it's the same with any of these guys. If they can come on similar level value deals that they're on this year, if it's value of the club, bring them back. And Caserio will take a big wide approach to a volume-based approach. Again, it's going to feel and look all very similar, I think, this off-season. I can't really see much changing. They might not have quite as many, 30-plus signings that they bring in. Jair, what would you say is the top 3 needs? You don't want to draft for need. You want to fill that in free agency. Top 3 needs for you going into the off-season?
I would say the first one would probably be quarterback, simply because even if you don't expect him to start, I want to see competition at quarterback. I don't want Davis Mills to just have the job. And then the second one would probably be the O. I mean, there's so many. There's
more than 3.
But I would probably say the O line because it's been like musical chairs. Everyone's coming in and out. They really need to solidify the interior O line. I feel like the tackles, it's not as bad considering if we keep Tunsil, which I doubt it, but if we do keep Howard, those are your 2 starters. Then if you decide to move Howard to the left tackle, you could always improve the right tackle position, or you could bring back Jerron Christian, who's done a serviceable job. Yeah, and he was a player that Caserio just claimed off waivers. So I'm adding to that point. I feel like Caserio has done a decent job of just, bringing players off the street and just, plug and play. And then probably the third one would probably be running back, running back or tight end, because, running backs, we don't have anyone under contract besides Scotty Phillips, I think, for next year. Yeah. So I think running back's going to be a big one.
Yeah. Ruben, I'm kind of torn. I suppose on the offense, I agree with those, and there's just so many. I think it's on the defensive side of the ball. What do you think? Because I think it's probably a close toss-up between edge rusher and cornerback, because you can never have enough of either. You probably take and draft as many of those guys as you can, regardless of if they're top-end talent. If you think you can get a job out of them, then fine. And then I think on the defense, you've got to really kind of sort out linebacker, because I think we need more athletic guys to play this scheme. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. I think that, if you don't bring back Desmond King, do the same thing, bring in a veteran guy. You can't really go wrong with too many, corners or edge rushers. I think that linebacker is something as well. I like Christian Kirksey, don't get me wrong, but not something to where I could say, yeah, let's go ahead and bring him back for next season. Camus, he is healthy, so I would love to bring him back. Also, shout out to Garrett Waller, what he's doing. As far as the offense, I've talked about guard help. Wouldn't mind another veteran wide receiver, but like Jair said, there's too many holes, on this team. I think Nick Caserio is going to do what he did last year, bring in a bunch of 1 to 2 year guys, and try to see best of the best competition as he likes.
Jair, if you had a crystal ball, 1st round pick, 2nd round pick, any couple of names or any guys you want, or even just a couple of candidates for 1st round, any draft guys you've looked at or seen watching the college ball on a Saturday you think you'd love to see on this team?
I feel the top 3 options on most people's boards, like it's a consensus between Aiden Hutchinson, the Oregon defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau, and Kyle Hamilton, the safety linebacker from Notre Dame. So if either of those 3 fall to the Texans, that's a gimme right there. Like that's an easy way to improve your defense. And if you, for whatever reason, you consider, hey, a team is offering me a future first or some day 2 picks to move up, I wouldn't mind I wouldn't mind entertaining those offers, trading back, getting that center from Iowa, or just bolstering the offensive line. There's a few really good the offensive line from Texas A&M, Green. Yeah, there's plenty of good options in the top 10, and obviously they're saying this draft isn't that deep at quarterback or certain positions, but there is talent. So it's just about finding the right players and maybe in the process accumulating draft picks by trading back.
Yeah, and where I see it, right, and if you think of, like, if you're at the top of the draft, and Caserio views very much his value, he talked about that with Mills. He doesn't care about the numbers; he only cares about the tape and what he sees, And I think that's the right way to look at it. And I like that point he made. But if you think of the top end edge rushers that have come out, like the Myles Garrett, like the Bosa brothers, like these guys have been taken at the top of the top tier of the draft, I think everyone's in agreement that Thibodeau and Hutchinson aren't in that class. So therefore, if you take those guys, you're not getting the true value that pick you could get. So therefore, I think Caserio will want to trade back and recognise that. But what I also do think is that you don't necessarily take a safety at that position. But what Kyle Hamilton does on the field at a safety position, if all positions were equal, completely outweighs what those two edge rushers can do, because his range, his movement, his tackling, just his size and frame, he's a freak.
Yeah.
And those two guys aren't freaks. Thibodeau maybe, if you get him in the right situation. Hutchinson's just a try-hard guy, like kind of like Watt. I don't say they play the same. They definitely don't. But Watt has done everything he can to get everything out of his body. Every inch, he's got it, because he's worked hard. And I think Hutchinson's that kind of guy. But really, in the true sense, you want 3 picks for that 3rd overall pick, because you could translate them into that 2 seconds if you can only move down a little. Yeah. So, Ruben, where do you stand on that? Do you think it's worth picking? Because I think, do you take the risk of put eggs in one basket with one of these guys that might not necessarily transform your defense, or do you trade back, or who would you like to see them pick up?
Yeah, so first I was on on those 2 guys, either Hutch or Thibodeau. After watching more of Kyle Hamilton, man, like I said, that dude is legit. I mean, when you're 6'4", you're a good open field tackler. You have a knack for taking the ball away. He was covering wide receivers, tight ends. He does a lot of great stuff that the Houston Texans need. I wouldn't mind if they trade back. I do like the safety from Alabama, Jordan Baker, as well. The other safety from Michigan. There's a lot of, great things about trading back. And if you are trying to rebuild and you are Nick Caserio, who just came off a stellar draft, right? All 5 players have made impacts this season. Give Nick Caserio maybe all the ammo that he wants and see if he could find multiple players and bring in.
Yeah, I think it's funny because last year he got rid of picks and got rid of a 4th round pick this year to only pick selected guys. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he goes back and takes a volume-based approach, what he's done to free agency, and just sees it as darts at the board, because he continually references all the time the draft's not the be-all and end-all. He's probably said that just about in every interview he's had. So, but I think for me, I just don't know how you pass on Kyle Hamilton if he's sitting there at 3. Look, he might not work out, and if you go high and get a safety, it doesn't necessarily pan out. Injuries, lack of mental preparation or whatever it might be. Is a difficult one. But yeah, I just think what he can do at that position, I think teams will be scared to pick him 1 and 2, because he's just not a done thing. But I think he's got potential. But you've seen guys like Derwin James just drop because people just, there was that positional value played into it. So I don't know where it is. But anybody that can get us some movement up front and build up your trenches, I don't care what side of the ball it's on, and then get guys that can cover, I think we'll be in a better position than we are now. But any other moves you'd like to see, Jair, in the off-season we're not touching before we get out of here?
Well, hopefully the Sean Watson trade goes through, because I was gonna point this out earlier, but I forgot. But if Caserio is somehow able to trade Deshaun this offseason, I feel like that's the biggest domino that's gonna fall. Because imagine that's gonna open up your options in terms of the draft, but also who knows, free agency, and also who knows, yeah, there's this report that David Culley might come back next year. That's and I'm going based off that. But if for whatever reason the Texans pivot from that, at least having all these first round picks, it's going to be very it's going to be very attractive to potential head coaching candidates.
Yeah, I think move on. Yeah, get out the sort of shadows that we've been in.
Because
Ruben, want to finish?
It's all about making this place more attractive, this team more attractive. So if you have more first round picks, it's gonna make you easily, raise you up, in terms of the most wanted for a potential head coach.
Yep. Ruben, what do you think?
Look, just going off of what he said, at some point in the next couple of, weeks, Nick Casario is going to have, the conversation with himself. Should David Culley be here or not? And with the thought of trading Deshaun Watson, multiple first-round picks, you're going to have, like I said, cap space with the trade, even more if you decide to trade Tunsil. I don't know which head coach wouldn't want to come here with multiple first-round picks, cap space, and a potential, developmental quarterback. That's if David Culley's not here. But I totally agree with Jair. You need to make this team one. We need a head coach, someone to finally say, yeah, I want to go to Houston and make that team, a franchise.
Yeah, no, I think we just need to, we need to move on. I think it's just been stuck spinning our wheels, whatever you want to call it, tread water. We want to move on. But yeah, no, thank you very much, guys, for your time. Jair, Ruben, appreciate it. A bit of a vacation edition. Probably less more about the game and more on the general picture stuff. But as you said, until we move on, nothing changes. So let's get some change. It's going to be an off-season to change, whatever happens. Forgot to say at the start, Happy New Year to you. Thanks to everybody for listening. Thanks to the fellas for their time talking this strange old team that never fails to give you something to talk about, that's for sure. But if you're checking on Facebook, on Twitter, like it, share it on YouTube. Get those algorithms churning. Let's get the name out there this year. We'll be here as much as we possibly can. Sanity providing in the off season. But thanks again for listening. We'll speak to you again next week.
All right. Take care.